Boy, guys, we might be in the midst of the storm and not even know it. I always expected that when the storm was upon us, we would have some big arrests of high-profile people, but what I'm seeing is a whole lot of really important prosecutions going on and crooks being taken down all over the country. And they're receiving little coverage. Sometimes it's important to hear the scripted announcements rather than a quick summary. This is such a time, and that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. It's something that just happened in Minnesota, which, as you know, is one of the most crime-ridden areas of the country, with a lot of illegals and a lot of crime. I hope that you begin to recognize signals that a scripted narrative is being played out, and that the story always goes deeper than what appears in such narratives. One technique being used is the release of a cluster of events around a target or targets that acclimate people to the possibility that something is wrong. Simultaneously, these cluster of events are essentially toying with the target as they become more and more fearful and begin to make mistakes that expose their true intentions. It's really an ingenious plan. Over the past couple of weeks, the topic of Somalians and Ilhan Omar has moved to the front of the stage. Let's walk through this. Ilhan Omar is a Somalian Democratic representative from Minnesota. She is part of what is known as the Squad. There have been allegations for years that even though she was brought here as a child, she fraudulently obtained citizenship later in life by marrying her brother, who was a citizen. She has been telling illegal immigrants how to avoid deportation, and she praises Somalia and derides the United States. She needs to go, and we have been watching her demise build over the last months. The vultures are circling above, and you can bet she knows it. In August, a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota targeting federal child nutrition programs was orchestrated through an NGO named Feeding Our Future, which led to over 75 arrests. The first wave of arrests occurred all the way back in 2022, but it has now moved into the spotlight when these 75 individuals, including Guhad Hashi Saeed, pleaded guilty in August 2025. They were charged with defrauding approximately $250 million by submitting false claims for meals that they never provided to children. Instead, they funneled funds into luxury purchases and real estate. This is your tax money, guys. Ongoing developments like the September 4th, 2025 arrest of Muna Weiss Fieden have brought Omar back into the headlines. It's one of the largest relief frauds in U.S. history and has rocked Minnesota's Somali American community. The fraud involved fake meal sites with absolutely no evidence linking it to undocumented immigrants receiving funds. Minnesota also is a blue state with sanctuary policies that protect these illegal immigrants. There are ongoing trials and expected additional charges. And while Representative Omar has not been charged and has condemned the fraud, she was the one that promoted and supported the organization, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her implicated in it in the future. So that was then. Yesterday, September 18th, a resolution was introduced by Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina to censure Omar and strip her of her assignments on the House Education, Workforce Committee, and the Budget Committee. This stemmed from Omar's social media repost and comments criticizing Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk after his death. But the censure failed in a 214 to 213 House vote, with Democrats tabling it and 4 Republicans joining them. So it wasn't that she was not censured, they tabled it and kicked the can down the road. I'm guessing the evidence will pile up against her, and they will be forced to revisit the issue. So that you understand, censure is like standing in the middle of the room and everybody points at you saying, "You're bad." It's a useless ritual to make the minions think that something real happened. As far as committee appointments, it doesn't look like she was on anything requiring special clearance, but she shouldn't be on committees anyway. In my opinion, from what I've seen, She should neither be in government nor the United States, and many agree with me. Thankfully, in February of this year, Omar was removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee by a 218 to 211 vote led by House Republicans because of past anti-Semitic statements about Israel. So the heat has been building in her kitchen for a while. Then, also on the 18th, Minnesota hits the headline with more Somalian fraud. I mean, how many coincidences before it's statistically impossible, guys? This is a takedown that you are watching unfold. Joe Thompson, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, said in a press conference that he is announcing the first round of indictments in an ongoing investigation of fraud in the Housing and Stabilization Services state Medicaid program. Here's the transcript of what he said.
The HSS program is riddled with fraud. The story has become all too familiar. Minnesota started the Housing Stabilization Service program in 2020. We were the first state in the nation to make this Medicaid benefit available. At the time, the program was estimated to cost approximately $2.6 million a year, but it quickly exploded. It grew more than $100 million a year in Medicaid billings within just a few years. Hundreds of companies enrolled in the program and began claiming to provide housing stabilization services to thousands of clients throughout the state of Minnesota. Many of these companies operated out of dilapidated storefronts or rundown office buildings that were full of other fraudulent healthcare companies, such as the Griggs Midway building in St. Paul. Rather than being general healthcare or social service providers, many of these companies were devoted exclusively to billing the Housing Stabilization Program. Today, we are charging 8 defendants for their role in this fraud scheme. 4 defendants, Mokhtar Hassan Aden, Mustafa Daib Ali, Khalid Ahmed Daib, and Abdifita Mohammed, are charged for their role in carrying out a fraud in a company called Brilliant Minds Services LLC, which is a housing stabilization services company run out of the Griggs Midway building in St. Paul. Brilliant Minds and its owners received more than $2 million in Medicaid billings based on their fraudulent claims to providing housing stabilization services. Defendants Christopher Adesoji Falade and Emmanuel Oluwademalade Falade are being charged for their role in operating another fraudulent housing stabilization company, called Falad Care, Inc. Together, they received more than $2 million in Medicaid billing, purportedly for providing housing stabilization services. 2 additional defendants are being charged by Information Today. Asad Ahmed Adaw, the owner of Leo Human Services, is being charged for his role in the scheme. His company received more than $2.7 million in housing stabilization services payments. His brother, Anwar Ahmed Adaw, the owner of Liberty Plus LLC, is also being charged here by Information. He and his company received more than $1 million in Medicaid payments for fraudulent housing stabilization services claims. All of these defendants and others that we are investigating followed a similar scheme. They identified vulnerable individuals, Medicaid-eligible individuals, many of whom were being released from drug or alcohol rehab facilities. They signed them up to receive housing stabilization services, purportedly to help them find stable housing, and then they billed Medicaid for services that they did not actually provide. Despite the hundreds of millions of dollars in payments that have gone out from the state of Minnesota to housing stabilization services companies, most of these individuals did not receive the stable housing they so desperately needed. The money was just simply stolen. Now, this is just the first round of indictments in this case. Unlike in this similar cases, such as Feeding Our Future, we're going to charge this case in waves as we develop the evidence for individual defendants and companies. The plan is to charge groups of defendants and companies as their cases are ready for indictment. This investigation is ongoing, and it's being conducted by agents from the FBI, Health and Human Services, OIG, and the IRS, along with assistance of many other law enforcement agencies, including the Postal Inspection Service and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. As I said, the investigation is ongoing, and we expect additional charges to be brought in the coming weeks and months. Before I open it up for questions, let me just say this. As many of you know, Minnesota is drowning in fraud. Many of the owners of housing stabilization service companies have one or more other companies through which they bill other Medicaid programs such as the EIDBI Autism Program, the ARMS, or the Adult Rehab Rehabilitative Mental Health Services Program, the ICS Integrated Community Support Program, the Community Access for Disability Inclusion or CADI program, PCA services, and other Medicaid waivered services. The level of fraud in these programs is staggering. Unfortunately, our system of trust but verify no longer works. These programs have been abused over and over to the point where the fraud has overtaken the legitimate services. I've been prosecuting these cases for years, and I've literally run out of ways to express what is happening in our state and in our state programs and to explain the coming iceberg I see as we reckon with fraud. Now, we can and will prosecute many of these individuals as we have been, but we cannot prosecute our way out of this problem. We must do more at the front end to stop the outflow of money. Everyone needs to pick up a shovel. The agents and prosecutors in this room have been doing extraordinary work to investigate and prosecute these cases. The reporters in this room have been asking the right questions and doing their own investigative reporting to identify fraudulent companies and schemes. And if there's a hopeful note, the state and its politicians are starting to take notice about the problem. It's time for everyone to speak up and stand up to confront the problem in the state before it's too late.
I have just a couple things that I'd like to add to this that brought a little more hope and a little more validation that everything is under control and this entire thing is very well planned out. Listening to this announcement really made me miss the chase, but I think sharing what I've seen with you guys is so much more important. So I looked up this Joseph Thompson, who is acting United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota, and I found out that this guy is more important than it might appear at first look. Thompson was appointed Assistant Special Counsel based in D.C. for 1 year from February 2023 through February 2024. The case that he was working on was the mishandling of classified documents found at the Penn Biden Center in Washington and the Delaware residence of President Joe Biden. Having seen how government prosecutions work, appointing a special counsel who worked a case for 1 year tells me that we are going to revisit the Biden document mishandling of classified documents. I don't know whether it will be against Joe Biden or to implicate other defendants, but something isn't done with that yet. Prior to being appointed to the Biden records case, Mr. Thompson was U.S. Attorney in Minnesota from 2014 until June of this year. He also was installed as chief of the Minnesota Fraud and Public Corruption section, where he continues to serve. So follow me here, guys. Somebody moved Joe Thomas to the fraud unit in 2022, moved him to D.C. on the Biden case in 2023. He returned to Minnesota in 2024, and now he is prosecuting the fraud, which according to him has been going on for years. My questions are, did Joe Biden appoint him to his own records case and the fraud unit, or did someone else install Thompson in these particular positions in preparation for Trump's takedown? Then comes the next question to ponder. Are these numerous prosecutions of Minnesota Somalians going to somehow lead us back to Ilhan Omar and her immigration status? Remember, Mr. Thompson said these various prosecutions will be coming in waves? Will the loudmouth Somalian activist ride the wave back home soon? And do you really think that all of this just started in January? By the way, President Trump said she should be impeached on his way home from London. Welcome to the awakening.